Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. We begin tonight with the Ukrainian peace process, a process which has been inching along for months and now suddenly could be kicking into high gear. President Trump is touting tremendous progress, saying we're getting, quote, very close to a peace deal. In a post on Truth Social today, Trump says his peace plan has been fine-tuned and only a few points of disagreement remain on both sides. The president has directed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to meet with Vladimir Putin in Moscow and Army Secretary Dan Driscoll to meet with the Ukrainians. Then Trump will meet with Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky, but only when the deal is final or in its final stages. So, a lot of optimism from the White House, but we've seen this movie before. And the last time it ended with broad suspicion that Putin is only using the talks as a tactic to string things out. Why? Because his army is slowly, brutally making progress. If you factor out humanitarian considerations, which have never meant anything to Putin, there aren't many compelling reasons for Russia not to keep fighting. The Europeans have so far failed to stop Russian aggression, and some countries continue to buy Russian oil, either directly or indirectly, thus funding Putin's war machine. And the Trump administration has made it clear it has no appetite for a forever war in the Donbass. Trump has said since day one of his administration he wants it over. So it should shock no one that Russia's foreign minister is already pouring cold water on all of this, warning that there's going to be a problem if this deal drifts too far from what Putin and Trump agreed to at the Alaska summit in August.
We
have channels of communication with our U.S. counterparts, and we use them. We expect to receive the version they consider interim after the coordination phase with the Europeans and the Ukrainians ends. Then we will review it, because if the spirit and letter of Anchorage, the key understandings we recorded, are stripped out, it will be a fundamentally different situation.
On the Ukrainian side, the top priority is a guarantee that whatever territory it's forced to give Russia is not merely an appetizer, with the wholesale devouring of the entire country to come at a later date. Whether that might involve long-range offensive weapons or an ironclad alliance with the West is unclear. Still, Zelensky told the coalition of the willing today that he's ready to move forward with the U.S. framework and talk to Trump. But as talks continue, so does the killing. Overnight, Russian drone strikes on Kyiv killed at least 7 people and wounded dozens more. Zelensky says it shows Ukraine needs security guarantees and that Russia isn't really serious about ending the war.
And as long as Russia has not taken real steps toward demobilization, real steps to shut down its war machine, steps that would clearly show that Russia is serious about ending this war of aggression, we do not have the right to stop working to support Ukraine, to support our people, and to support our collective security.
Let's go right now to NewsNation's Kelly Meyer for us live at the White House. Kelly, there's a lot of optimism coming out of President Trump's Truth Social post, but boy, to say the devil is in the details here is almost a massive understatement. So much can go wrong.
Absolutely right, Elizabeth, and I believe that's what the White House knows they're up against, but they are still feeling optimistic here, especially with how quickly things are moving. A source this weekend told me to keep my phone close to me because things were going to be moving so rapidly, and it really is. We saw it go from Geneva to Abu Dhabi today, and now moving on to Witkoff and Putin meeting face-to-face. So this is something that the White House is feeling positive about, but a U.S. official also telling me today that Ukraine is in agreement with the proposal that President Trump put forward, but they want some details to be worked out between Zelensky and Trump face-to-face. President Trump saying he's not going to meet with Zelensky or Putin face-to-face until there is a done deal, or at least they're close to it. Here's what else the president had to say earlier today.
I've also ended 8 wars in 9 months, and we're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there. 25,000 soldiers, Ukraine, Russia. In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out.
So President Trump laying out the next phase on his Truth Social post. So Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, going to be meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin face to face. The two are familiar with each other. They've met a few times over the course of this negotiation. And we also know Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll, who's someone that the president really handpicked just in the last week or so to go over and assist Rubio, the Secretary of State, and Witkoff in these discussions. He's going to be meeting with the Ukrainians at the same time Witkoff is meeting with Putin. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but we did hear from Zelensky's chief of staff saying on X that Driscoll will arrive in Kyiv later this week. And there is new reporting tonight from Bloomberg that the White House is not denying the authenticity of Witkoff having advised Russia on how to pitch the Ukraine plan to President Trump. The White House telling us this tonight. The story proves one thing. Special Envoy Witkoff talks to officials in both Russia and Ukraine nearly every day to achieve peace, which is exactly what President Trump appointed him to do. The Russian official, whose calls are also in this report, replied to that story on X with the quote, fake. Elizabeth.
All right, Kelly Meyer, that Bloomberg report. Setting off a lot of raising a lot of eyebrows, let's just put it that way, in Washington and on Capitol Hill. Let's get insight and analysis now from our panel. Bill Taylor is the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, and retired four-star Army General Joseph Votel is the former commander of CENTCOM. Great to have both of you here. Ambassador, as this peace deal was being feverishly negotiated, Russia, as we just reported, launched this devastating wave of missiles and drones on Kyiv, killing and wounding civilians. You know, we just heard Zelensky say this shows he's not serious about peace. What message do you think Putin is sending?
Oh, it's absolutely the right. He's not interested in peace, Elizabeth. We know this. This is a constant shelling. This is what he wants. Time. He wants to drag us out. He wants to play for time. He wants to be able to grind forward inch by inch, meter by meter, grind down the Ukrainians. He has no strategy other than to wait us out. So this is part of that strategy.
General, the peace plan has now been, it started off over the weekend. It was a chaotic sort of process, and there was a lot of criticism from Republican lawmakers about what the original plan entailed. But it started off as 28 points. It's now been whittled down to 19 after American negotiators met with the Ukrainians. It appears that the cap on Ukraine's military may now be gone. It also appears that also gone is the ban on NATO troops inside Ukraine, presumably as a peacekeeping force. And most importantly, that the huge swath of land that was awarded to Russia in the original deal is either gone or set aside. This all raises the question, is Russia going to agree to this?
Well, Elizabeth, first of all, it's great to be with you. Yeah, I think that's the $64,000 question. Surrendering terrain, the limitations being put on Ukrainian military, and of course, NATO membership or NATO presence in Ukraine, I think have been significantly, identified disputed areas of agreement with the original plan. So these are the big issues that have to be resolved. That said, we'll see what Russia says on this. These would seem to me to be very important things to President Putin. So I suspect we will get some pushback on that.
General, Russia hasn't seen the new whittled down plan yet. It will soon. The foreign minister, as we already said in the intro, is saying this is a no-go. It sounds like, at least from the original plan and down to this, it raises the question, what is Russia willing to concede? Is there anything Russia is willing to concede?
Well, as the ambassador pointed out, Russia doesn't have much incentive to concede. They're going to continue to play this out. They're slowly grinding this down. They're making some progress every day. Fatigue is setting in over a long period of time with this conflict. So I think Mr. Putin's approach is to try to drag this out as long as he can and get as much as he can out of this.
Ambassador, there was an uproar among Republican lawmakers over the terms of this deal. They're furiously feuding with the Trump administration on social media. Republican Senator Don Bacon called the deal disgusting and said it should be shredded for the garbage it is. Senator Mitch McConnell posted that any deal that rewards aggression wouldn't be worth the paper it's written on. Senator Lindsey Graham, a close Trump ally, warned as long as Putin believes he is in the driver's seat, he will insist on capitulation, not peace. We're seeing real divisions within the Republican Party over the terms of this deal, even as they change.
Well, Elizabeth, that was all based on the 28-point plan, which was to be shredded. It has been shredded. I think they've given it up. Now they're down to this more reasonable plan that had the input of the Ukrainians and the Europeans, by the way, thanks to Marco Rubio, thanks to the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio. They have gotten input from the Ukrainians and Europeans, which has made the new plan reasonable, and the Ukrainians can sign on. But I think the general is exactly right. The Russians are going to hate it. So how to get them to agree? You got to put pressure on Putin. If you got to put pressure on the person who's going to hold out. If we want this to end, we need to pressure Putin with military and with finance.
But what have we not been pressuring Putin all this time? What more can we do? I mean, at times Trump has sounded fed up and exasperated, even angry with Putin. But then he goes back to saying, let's make a deal. And we have this, reporting from Bloomberg that Steve Witkoff was calling Putin and saying, here's how you pitch Trump, advising him on the best way to get what he wants.
There are a lot of ways we can still put pressure on Putin. One is to give the Ukrainians the weapons that they need to go deep into Russia against military targets. And the Tomahawk missiles would do exactly that. That's number one. Number two, on the sanctions side, Trump has put sanctions on the two largest oil companies, Russian oil companies, and that's starting to have an effect on the revenues that the Russians get from selling their oil and gas. And that can be implemented by cracking down on this illegal fleet, the shadow fleet, that moves the Russian oil around. So, yeah, there's a lot we can do to squeeze the Russians.
General, the original proposal from the Trump team, the 28-point proposal, gave Russia all the land that it now holds, along with territory it doesn't even hold. 1 million Ukrainians live on all that land. Can Zelensky even agree to hand over part of that or all of that if he was pressured to? Or does there need to be a referendum in Ukraine? Zelensky is not a dictator like Putin. He's an elected leader.
Well, I think it's important to appreciate that. Ukraine has been fighting for the last several years as well and has lost a lot. So there's been a lot of blood invested in this from a Ukrainian standpoint. So it would be very difficult, I think, for Mr. Zelensky to give up that territory. It'd be difficult for those who have fought over that to see it given up. The fact of the matter is that's important terrain. Part of the reason that Mr. Putin wants that is it's important for his own production. It's important for his own economics. It's important for his own ideology. All those reasons apply on the Ukrainian side as well. And in addition to rewarding aggression.
Right.
So, I think it's very difficult, I think, to give up terrain. Certainly there's been terrain there that's been occupied for a long period of time. Perhaps there can be some discussions around that, but certainly the expansion of terrain to the Russians would seem very, very difficult.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, we've only seen the 28-point plan. We haven't seen the 19-point plan. It hasn't been made public or leaked as of yet. But the original plan gave Russia amnesty for all the war crimes that have been documented that it has committed against the Ukrainian people, including the kidnapping of more than 20,000 Ukrainian children. We shall see what happens. It's going to be something if there's a way for this administration to get both these parties to sign on to a deal. General Votel, Ambassador Taylor, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your expertise. All right. To Capitol Hill now, where 6 Democratic lawmakers who put out that video telling troops to refuse illegal orders are now under investigation by the FBI. Several of those Democrats, all of them veterans or one of them who worked for the CIA, say the FBI has contacted them now to set up interviews. President Trump is calling them the seditious 6. He is calling for their arrest. The video they released last week was unusual for a number of reasons. In it, they did not say whether any of Trump's orders are, in fact, illegal.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk. This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens. Like us, you all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
But from right here at home. Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
Now, all of this comes a day after the Pentagon announced it is investigating Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. He's a retired Navy captain, a fighter pilot, a former astronaut. The Pentagon Secretary Pete Hegseth is threatening to recall Kelly to active duty so that he can face court-martial proceedings. Let's go to NewsNation's Joe Khalil now, live for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, how are lawmakers responding to these to this outreach now from the FBI to all 6 that they have to now sit down for interviews? Are they under investigation formally by the FBI?
What we know is the FBI has not demanded that they meet with them. There are no subpoenas yet, Elizabeth, but the FBI and the Department of Justice have officially requested interviews with not just Senator Kelly, but all 6 of those Democrats who were in that video. And the response today came from the 4 House members, Congressman DeLuzio, Congresswoman Houlihan, Congresswoman Goodlander, and Congressman Jason Crow, all 4 putting out this joint statement, which is really a defiant one. It's the same message that we've heard basically since the Kelly news broke, which is this. They say President Trump is using the FBI as a tool to intimidate and harass members of Congress. They said yesterday the FBI contacted the Sergeant at Arms. No amount of intimidation or harassment will stop us from doing our jobs. They say we swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. That oath lasts a lifetime, and we intend to keep it. We will not be bullied, and we will not give up the ship. So it's unclear at this point how far this investigation is going to go, Elizabeth, but obviously a significant development here. The Department of Justice and the FBI deal in our criminal courts and the criminal justice system. Obviously, what Senator Mark Kelly is going through at the Pentagon, the military has its own system of justice here. But the fact that these investigations, that these probes are now expanding to include all of these members just shows that this is probably not going to be over anytime soon, even if these members and senators may very well have the law, the First Amendment, the speech and debate clause on their side, which allows members of Congress some level of protection from lawsuits if they're acting in their professional capacity. Still, it does appear like Secretary Hegseth doesn't want to let this go anytime soon, and apparently now the FBI and DOJ are getting involved in it. We should mention with Senator Kelly's case, we know now that Secretary Hegseth is referring it to the Navy Department, eventually the Secretary of the Navy, to handle the rest of it. So we'll see where this progresses and how it does, but none of these Democrats seem to be cowering in any way. In fact, they're making it a point to publicly push back on every development that we see.
Right. It's not clear what crime the FBI would be questioning them about. So that's all right. Joe Khalil. Daily developments on this story now happening. Thank you so much. All right, coming up for us, the search is on for a missing high school football coach. And today it was revealed that he is wanted on child pornography charges. The disturbing story out of Virginia next. Plus, a former Pentagon official turned whistleblower who helped produce that explosive UFO documentary joins me live in a bit. Why Lou Elizondo says this documentary could be what spurs the U.S. government to finally go public with what it knows about alien technology. For the past 6 days, a small town in rural Virginia has been gripped by the disappearance of a high school football coach. 46-year-old Travis Turner vanished into thin air last Thursday as state police were on the way to his house. Police said at the time that they were heading there as part of the early stages of an investigation. The disappearance was odd, to say the least. Turner's football team was in the middle of an undefeated season, and they were prepping for regional playoffs. Turner had appeared cheerful and conversational in a television interview just a few days earlier. His wife, Leslie, pleaded with friends on Facebook saying, quote, "Travis is missing, and that's all we know. We need him here with us." His disappearance led to a multi-agency search using drones and canines. And then today, a bombshell plot twist. Police just revealed that they were headed to Turner's house that Thursday because he's being investigated for child pornography and soliciting a minor. Remember, this is a popular football coach in charge of teenaged athletes. Joining us now is Jennifer Coffindaffer. She's NewsNation's law and justice contributor. Jennifer, this is the most bizarre story. Turner went missing as police were on their way to his home on Thursday. Did he get some kind of heads up they were on the way? He must have known.
Yes, this is no coincidence. This is such a small town. And whenever you have that situation and the school officials would have been notified because they put the person on leave, which I believe to be the coach, I think the news got out and he was in the wind.
He's wanted, we know now, on 5 counts of possession of child pornography and 5 counts of using a computer to solicit a minor. These are very serious charges, and there are long prison sentences attached to them.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about those for a minute because actually I think they're very intertwined. I think it's the child pornography that was from the solicitation of the minor. So essentially he used his computer to solicit that minor to provide provocative and child pornographic photos to him.
So selfies, in essence, or something like that?
That's what I believe. And also, I thought it was interesting that police said, this is not the end of it. There are other charges. And Elizabeth, this is not unusual. Individual predators like this, if indeed he is guilty, they normally strike more than once, and there's normally more than one victim.
What took police so long to actually reveal what was going on? I mean, several days went by before they finally, today, said, okay, we were going there to arrest him.
I think they were very worried about that information getting out. In other words, they couched it so carefully, saying, we just wanted to go to his house to talk with him about charges, when really, in fact, I believe they were going to arrest him.
So they're now searching this heavily wooded area that is not far from where he lived. Nighttime temperatures in that area are going to go as low as 18 degrees this week. How long can he do this?
Elizabeth, this is the biggest news to me. I was looking at the planes that were overhead and looking at their flight patterns. They are very much in one particular area. And the fact that they're focused on this wooded area makes me wonder if he's going to be able to face the shame of facing these charges.
What do you mean?
I mean that in my experience, and I can tell you the last person that I was involved with the arrest that had similar charges killed himself as we were on the front stoops getting ready to hit the house. So a lot of individuals who have lived lives that have been very successful. He was a successful football player, football coach. He's a second generation guy. A lot of times they just can't handle the shame that this would bring upon he and his family.
Wise County Public Schools say they are working with law enforcement that Turner is not permitted to be on school property. They released a statement saying he is banned from any and all contact with students. I can't imagine what an uproar this has created in that community to have this high school coach who was about to take this team of excited young, teenage boys to the championship football game after leading them through this undefeated season, the ramifications that this must be having on this small community.
Absolutely. This championship, it's just a few days away, round 2 of the playoffs. And to go undefeated, to win in their first championship round, I mean, that was a red flag that he would leave his team right before that. And, Elizabeth, I feel so bad for this town. I feel bad for the wife. Look, most of the time, the wives never know what's going on. This is all done very secretly.
Well, and it's important to note that he is he's always innocent until proven guilty. We don't know that he did anything at all, but obviously police believe, and certainly his disappearance and vanishing into thin air is cause for concern. Jennifer Coffindaffer, always great to talk to you. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up for us, more people are under arrest for that brazen break-in at the Louvre. But the stolen jewels, they're still missing. So where are they?
This doctor says he has found a way to kill cancer.
It is the only cell that's within us that's never been unlocked.
Chris Cuomo on a breakthrough that will astound you. Tonight, 10/9 Central, only on NewsNation.
For more more people are under arrest tonight in connection to that $102 million jewelry heist at the Louvre last month. Prosecutors say 2 men and 2 women, ranging in age from 31 to 40, were taken into custody. That brings the total now to 8 people arrested. It's unclear what role they all played in the heist, though local media says one of them that was just arrested was part of the group that actually carried out the stunning theft. The suspects are accused of stealing 8 of France's crown jewels from the Louvre in just 7 minutes. Police say they dressed as construction workers and used a crane to break into the museum's second-floor window. They then smashed 2 display cases, grabbed the jewelry, and fled on motorbikes or mopeds. Some of the stolen pieces include an emerald necklace and earrings from Napoleon's second wife and the tiara of Empress Eugenie with nearly 2,000 diamonds in it. The jewels have still not been found. Turning now to President Trump's illegal immigration crackdown, ICE says it has arrested a record number of illegal immigrants as of mid-November. The agency has targeted cities including Charlotte, Portland, and Chicago in recent months. But there's one region of the country where immigration-related arrests are unusually low, and that is the Pacific Northwest. There could be several reasons for that. Fewer illegals crossing the border, lax enforcement, and perhaps even the weather. To sort it all out, NewsNation's Ali Bradley joins us now live from Washington State near the northern border. Ali, why is it so quiet on the northwestern front?
Yeah, a lot of focus in other places, not so much in the PNW, the Pacific Northwest, right? When we look at major cities across the U.S., we're looking at double digit for interior enforcement arrests. We obtained data from our sources that show in Chicago, around 17,000 arrests. In Dallas, around 22,000. And then also in Miami, around 29,000, which we know that is kind of an immigration hub. And aside from Chicago and LA, we haven't seen a lot of protests or a lot of unrest in these major cities with these double-digit arrests. But in the Pacific Northwest, which includes Seattle and Portland, we have seen people condemn immigration enforcement, condemn ICE and Border Patrol's presence. And that is where ICE has only arrested 4,000 illegal immigrants, according to that data that we obtained. Now, one of the recent arrests does include a known Sureños gang member. That happened up here in Linden. That's why we're up here. Essentially, the northern border, just a stone's throw away from Canada. And this guy, he actually ran from them. It wasn't the first time they tried to catch him. He fled in the past. He even rammed an ICE officer's vehicle last month. He's now in ICE custody facing assault on a federal officer charges. So it's not because of a lack of people living in the area that are here illegally leading to these lower arrest numbers than these other cities. When we look at data from our sources, it shows there are more than 126,000 people on ICE's radar. They're on the docket right now. 11,000 of them are convicted criminals and 27,000 have a final order of removal. So that means that those individuals have been told they have to leave by a judge, that they don't qualify for asylum, but they just haven't left. So it's not like ICE doesn't have people that they can go after here. And all of this comes after Tom Homan, the border czar, set his sights on Portland, right? We know he was in Portland a couple of times. We saw Antifa riots breaking out. We saw issues there, but we haven't seen a massive surge in resources like we have in Chicago or in Charlotte even. And so these numbers aren't reflecting any surge, even though they've talked about surging resources here, Elizabeth. So we'll definitely be watching if that happens. But as of yet, hasn't been much of a surge with 4,000 arrests so far.
All right, Ali Bradley reporting live from Seattle. Thank you so much. Coming up for us, alien beings landed at a U.S. military base, exited a spacecraft, and then interacted with American service members. It's not a scene from Independence Day. This is what senior members of the U.S. government are going on record, on camera, and saying. We've got that and other mind-blowing revelations in the new UFO documentary, and one of the producers and stars of the documentary joins me next. A new documentary called The Age of Disclosure is blowing the lid off everything we thought we knew about UFOs and aliens. And this isn't some Hollywood science fiction movie. Officials from the highest levels of the U.S. government have gone on the record and on camera to speak about an alleged 80-year global cover-up, concealing the evidence and existence of intelligent alien life, not just from the public, but even at times from the president himself. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in the documentary, and he says that the program is so secretive that even presidents have been deemed not vital to know about it.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
I had the chance to speak with the movie's director and producer, Dan Farah, recently. He told me how non-human beings had, quote, interacted with members of the U.S. Air Force, as in face-to-face on American soil. You also have two different astrophysicists in the documentary who say that the government has retrieved at least two different alien species, and that one of them made contact with the crash retrieval team. What does that mean? Does that mean it was alive when they captured it?
One of the intelligence officials in the film speaks about an event that happened on a U.S. military base where two UAP approached the base. One of them landed, and apparently non-human beings exited the craft and interacted with members of the Air Force and the CIA.
The revelations didn't end there. Joining me now is someone who appears in The Age of Disclosure. Lou Elizondo is a former Pentagon official. He's also executive producer of the documentary. Lou, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I just got to ask you first about what I was talking to Dan Farr about. Two different alien species. Can you tell me anything about them?
Well, what you're referring to was the alleged potential landing of Holloman Air Force Base back in the 1950s, where a vehicle, a craft of unknown origin, had landed at the edge of the airfield and initiated contact with individuals from both the Central Intelligence Agency and the United States Air Force. And if that's the case, think of what the consequences of that, right? That means that somewhere someone had maybe perhaps pre-coordinated or arranged or was aware of this potential landing, enough so that individuals on the base were actually alerted and prepared for and waiting for these craft, right? So that kind of gives you an idea that perhaps there was some sort of dialogue or some sort of communication, perhaps even before that event took place.
That was not something that you have firsthand knowledge about. You weren't there. What do you have firsthand knowge about?
Well, boy, how much time do you have, Elizabeth?
We've got about 7 minutes.
Okay, so as you may know, I ran the government's program at the Pentagon roughly from around 2010 called ATIP to about 2017 when I resigned in protest.
ATIP is the program that is in charge of studying alien spacecraft
Yeah,
and
that's
reverse
what it
engineering, right?
Correct. Despite, well, not exactly. It was the Pentagon's investigation into UFOs, or what we now call UAP. And it was replaced later by an organization that was called the UAP Task Force, which, by the way, one of those individuals, the leader of that, was also in our documentary. He's also an executive producer, Jay Stratton. And then later on, Arrow replaced that organization. So there's been a lot of people are surprised to learn that the Pentagon, A, studied UFOs, but B, continues to study UFOs and has for a very, very long time.
We know from the documentary that they're not just studying UFOs. You say we're trying to reverse engineer from the spacecraft that we have found, use that technology, and that we're in a secret sort of arms race with Russia and China, who both also have alien spaceships. The documentary reports that the Soviets found a big one back in 1989. Do we know when the Chinese found one, and how do we know that anyway?
Sure. Well, let me give you some more compelling information here, perhaps, that you may not be aware of. Just recently, there was another hearing on the Hill under oath, and one of the individuals to testify under oath was a journalist named George Knapp. George Knapp testified that back in the early 90s, right when the Berlin Wall came down, there was this brief period of cooperation between then former Soviet Union and the United States, and he received a handful of very classified documents from Russian generals about their UFO program and the reverse engineering program, and he actually successfully smuggled them out of Russia and brought them here to the United States. So there's a lot of information suggesting that both Russia and other adversaries have their own UAP program. And in fact, China has already admitted it publicly in a newspaper that they have their own UFO program and have been petitioning the United Nations in order to help lead a worldwide investigation. Now, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with China necessarily doing that, but it shows the level of eagerness that some of our adversaries are displaying towards this topic of UAP. Remember, this is a topic that for a long time was really fraught with stigma and taboo. And I think only now we're beginning to get to the point where within the American psyche, we can actually have a serious conversation and not think about, Little Green Men or Elvis on the Mothership or tinfoil hats.
We know that from the documentary that at least two different U.S. American administrations seriously considered going public with the information that we have recovered alien spacecraft, according to the documentary. It was the George Bush II administration. This was right after 9/11, and the first President Trump administration. Both administrations, after studying this very carefully, decided against it because they felt like the public couldn't handle it. The world couldn't handle this yet.
Well, I can't speak on behalf. Let me, if I can, just real quick, just to correct the record. I can't verify that Trump himself was briefed, and certainly I wouldn't feel comfortable.
But we know you report Steve Mnuchin was briefed, the then Treasury Secretary, on what the economic ramifications would be.
Absolutely. There were senior individuals in the Trump administration. I just want to be very careful not to put words into people's mouths. But yes, there were very senior people in the Trump administration that were briefed. And I know two people that were actually at the meeting during the George Bush administration back in the 2000s, early 2000s, where they actually sat for a week in a room sequestered by the White House to try to discuss the pros and cons of having a conversation, open conversation about UAP with the American people.
And they decided we weren't ready for it?
I think the consensus was at the end, based upon the individuals we talked to who attended those meetings, they were very eager and excited in the beginning, and by the end of the week, they all had unanimously agreed that there was just too much on the scale weighing against the disclosure at that time.
Yeah, the panic, the sort of existential crisis that might arise. I was very struck in the documentary about this whole aspect that many physicists and defense experts in the documentary say it's possible that these alien ships are hiding in our oceans. We've mapped just 27% of Earth's oceans. We know more about the surface of the moon and the Mars than we do about our own oceans. It's actually the perfect place to hide.
Right, and that's why I don't like to use the word aliens per se, because frankly, at the end of the day,
they might come from here.
They may be just as natural to Earth as we are, right? They're just, some sort of hidden species. We're always discovering new species, especially in the depths of our oceans. It's miles and miles deep in some parts. And if you wanted to hide something, clearly that'd be a great place to hide something.
Lou Elizondo, this is an amazing and fascinating documentary. Do you think the world is ready for an administration of some country to come out and say publicly, we have this and you deserve to know?
I think the truth is always the best antidote. Whether the population is ready or not, that's not really for me to decide. I always think that the truth shall always be told.
All right. Lou Elizondo, great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
My honor and privilege. Have a great night. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too. Coming up, what if everything we thought we knew about cancer was wrong? Chris Cuomo spoke to a doctor who says he has found a life-saving cancer treatment. A preview of our NewsNation special, Killing Cancer, coming up next. All right, tonight at 10, we have a NewsNation special. It's called Killing Cancer, The Power Within. It is hosted by Chris Cuomo. Chris sits down with a doctor and entrepreneur who says he has found a way to cure cancer, but that governmental red tape is making it hard to get past the clinical trial stage. Meanwhile, he says, demand is sky high. Here's a preview of their conversation.
So here's what you haven't been able to fix, which is the demand.
10,000 desperate requests daily. If you look at this one, September 26th, doctor, please help me. It's very hard for us literally to play God.
Behind each message, a patient in pain, a family in crisis.
Well, the ones that get you have to be the kids, right?
So this is what's heartbreaking. If you look at this, my 2-year-old nephew is currently going through chemo. I mean, this is going on and on.
And getting accepted into any clinical trial for experimental treatment is no easy task. Just ask Jim Johnson. Eventually, he had so many tumors, his oncologist dropped him.
He said, "There's nothing more I can do for you. Your last chance is to get into a clinical trial." I tried to get into half a dozen clinical trials, at all the big hospitals in New York. In every case, the pharmaceutical companies kicked me because my case was so unusual. They were afraid that I would skew their numbers. They knew that their stock valuation was more important in my life.
Jim's last hope was getting into one of Dr. Soon Shang's trials. And that's when he finally caught a stroke of luck. He's been coming here to the clinic for treatment for the past 18 months. And the results, he says, are nothing short of miraculous.
Liver enzymes are down, lymphocytes are up, white blood count is back to normal. It's been 6 months since my last MRI. I have no new tumors. I got nothing. Man saved my life.
Wow. Chris Cuomo joins me now. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong says this treatment could make chemo obsolete.
So what he does is reverse the process. His theory is something you and I are familiar with, even though we're not clinicians. We've heard the story a million times, which is, hey, the chemo worked, the tumor's down, but they're so weak, and then the person succumbs.
It makes you so sick.
Right, so he flips it, and you don't use as much of that because you are boosting the natural killer or the T cells and letting them do the work, and he takes us through it. Now, so why doesn't everybody use it? Because it's not that simple, that's why. The FDA has standards, it has tests. Dr. Pat says there are too many. There's too much, and the system is designed to preference those at the top of the food chain, and even a billionaire can't find a different way in. Now, there will be pushback. People will say he's selling the hype more than the science. Okay, but what about the system? The system, no commented. I've never had that happen before.
Yeah,
there's been a process involved, and they just say no comment.
I got to tell you, a friend of mine developed a turned out to be a very successful cancer treatment drug. He went through the same thing. It went through all long trials. He was fielding phone calls from desperate people, many of them very powerful and dying. Please, can my wife, can my sister, can my daughter be part of your clinical trial? And he was not allowed to say yes. And got a lot of blowback and criticism of you're picking who lives and dies. Because here's the honest to goodness truth. If you think you're going to die from cancer and you know all the risks and you want to sign up for the trial and say, use me, I'm your guinea pig, why shouldn't the system allow that to happen? Because too often they say, no, it can't happen.
And even if they do, who pays? Because insurers aren't going to pay.
Exactly.
So this is intricate. Look, here's my feeling about it. Okay, this is not, Elizabeth and I co-anchored 2020 together. We did tons of award-winning work. This is different. I'm telling his story with Miguel Sancho, who produced for both of us. Brilliant guy. And I want the fight that's going to come. This system is not geared to do maximal work for the most people. And look, the guys at the top of it, this was part of the campaign when they took it over. This is their opportunity. They want to have a fight. Let's have a fight.
All right. Get after it.